Hello, hello. Sliding. You couldn't. Just went off to now. The connection is
Good evening, everyone. Hello. Hi. I'm Padma Ayala, founder of Seattle Data AI and Security. You all being here on a beautiful summer evening means a lot to me. Your curiosity, your dedication, that's what gives me motivation. Many people ask me, Padma, working for a non-profit is sometimes it's a very, we question ourselves. But these moments stay very close to me. So thank you again. So I think, as always, I want to go again one time. I don't want to read the mission vision, but it all started in 2021, post pandemic, when people were dreading to come outside into public gatherings. It really bothered me because any fear is no good. So people have to cross the fears, they have to come. And we humans we do well when we connect. So that was one basic reason. And networking should not cost like sunlight, water, air that we breathe. All these things are priceless. Now, the other thing is world class knowledge. It should also come free because, um, you know, wisdom, knowledge, all, from generations to generations, that's how they all got passed. So, and AI and this data, AI security, this field every minute and second it's exploding. So this is one time this is very different than before because which industry is not getting affected by this? Every industry, the way how they used to do business, everything is changing, and many people they were asking me questions like, Padma, how do we get into this? So that also made me started thinking, what should we do? So this is the forum. Bring the great leaders who have done this, share their experiences. And my only hope, sincere hope, is that even one person, even one thing what they have said, it could be in the architecture, or it could be in their journey, or it may be, the problem that they have solved. There will be a very fine lesson that one can carry to you know, them. So that's how many such great snippets of knowledge shaped me. So anyway, with all that in mind, we started Seattle Data. It's solid 2 years now, and there are so many great moments that we would like to share with the others are going to share. But I'm again, it's a zero cost, and everybody should come without thinking and learn. Is just that's a simple basic. But even though that was our vision, sometimes it will go beyond our imagination. For example, I want to bring two great universities, state universities, Georgia State University and University of Washington. You all know University of Washington, Georgia State University. We went and did one last year. We did a fabric tour at their they gave their space for free. So the dean got so impressed, and when I spoke to him, all that I told him is like, now here is the students are coming out, academia, and then there is the industry, and of course here is the gov. We should all build cyber clinics, data and AI labs, so that students can build some solutions into the open source, and somebody else can, work further work, and then these can be later dog food, or they can take somebody can take those solutions and apply. So this kind of a knowledge is what we should build. So he and Yuda both got fascinated with that idea, and there's a potential that it has not happened yet, but we are walking towards it. Is that there may be an MOU that we will be signing very soon, and not just these two universities. The third one is also joining, which is UT Dallas. So those are the one update, and then um, I think one of the reason why I do this is, like I said, I love to pass the torch. Now I'm passing this to this young lady Chitra. She's going to speak the next things, and she's going to share the next what are the great things that are coming. So Chitra.
Thank you so much, Padma. Thank you so much for your encouragement throughout. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I don't see the energy. It's a bright, sunny day. We have a loud round of applause and a big hi. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, welcome, everybody. We're going to keep it quick. The only tiny ask from everybody that is present here today, the only way we want to spread the word, bring more people, encourage more and more people to come join us, for them to learn, for them to learn, network, and then thrive, is one way that you share our events and the community with all your friends or all your network and colleagues. So these are some QR codes that you can scan. You'll have all first-hand updates on LinkedIn, any event, any speaker that's coming. That's the first place you'll see. Even before we post it on our website, we want to share it with with our community. So that's the first place we do. So please find the QR codes for LinkedIn and for our website and YouTube. And anybody who has missed the event today, or you want to go back and check the slides of the speakers, we have the YouTube live recording being done, and that's going to be posted on our YouTube channel. So anytime you want to refer back, you can go check it out there. About today's event, we have our wonderful speakers all present here today. The first one is Robin. Um, again, Padma has been talking about Robin, such great things about her. We are excited to have her here, and you'll all be all as much excited after listening to her presentation. We also want to welcome Rajesh. He has come all the way from Australia here. Next in line is Parishit. Again, a great speaker. Padma has such wonder. She was so excited for this event today. So we're all excited to have four speakers. We usually have three speakers in our lines every month, but this time is something different, and we are very much excited to do that. And our next speaker is Gajendra, who's working at Apple, and we are very pleased to welcome him here as well. I'm going to be quick talking about these tours. So, other than our monthly events, we have these big, long, full day events, which are we've done Fabric Tour in the past, and we've started with a security tour in Seattle, and now we are moving to Dallas and Atlanta. At Dallas, it's on August 28th at UT Dallas, University of Texas, Dallas. And we have a keynote being done by Cisco and 25 other speakers who are all CISOs, CIOs, and security architects. Another great thing that is we are onboarding, or we have a set of 20, like around 25 advisors slash mentors who are coming forward as separate and putting up separate booths to personally train or personally engage in conversations, share their um, experiences, and help any startups or students do resume or LinkedIn reviews, and then help startups brainstorm or come up with ideas, pitch their ideas. So that is one great thing that we want to mention. And we have another security tour coming up in Atlanta on November 6th at GSU, Georgia State University. Other details will be announced soon on our website. I would like to pass on the next monthly events to Akshara. She would.
Our core team, Anil is here. Anil, yeah, this guy is helping us in planning the Dallas. That's fine. Thank you, Anil, for doing this.
Yeah. I would like to let Akshara talk more about the monthly events and the Women in Tech.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome. Everybody's already had given a huge round of applause. I'm not going to ask for it again. I'll be really quick. So these are our upcoming monthly events. We have one on August 12th, same time, same place. It's about the AI agents in the wild. And we also have one on September 10th. It's about the zero trust and enterprise. So we hope to see you again. I know we have a lot of returning people here because they love our events and they're free. So please come and bring everybody. As we have international speakers now joining from Australia, the idea is we do want to go global. And so, for the first time ever, Seattle Data AI and Empower Shakti are joining hands together for a global Women Who Build AI series. Empower Shakti is Empower Shakti is another nonprofit organization. You can call it a sister organization of Seattle Data AI, mainly focused for women. We want to build women who are strong, independent, and way ahead in their careers in the technology space, whether they need mentorship, whether they are coming back to work after a break, or whether they are from the underrepresented communities. We cover it all. So you can come and meet me outside. I won't take a lot of time here to find out more about that. And I am going to pass on the same torch now. Funny.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Once again, a very good evening to one and all. And thank you so much for joining us today. And how many are you here for the first time? That feels so good to see a lot of new hands every time. And we hope you'll be joining us for all the coming up events. And coming up next, so apart from the networking events and we shared the knowledge over there, but here we are coming up with new hackathons for this year. The first hackathon that we are planning for 30th of July, that's more focused for earlier career professionals to build tech into multiple themes. We have AI security copilot, trustworthy data analyst, and human in the loop. And for thank you so much, Aruna, for supporting this hackathon. And also, we are coming up with next big hackathon that we are yet to be conducted. That is on October. We will be announcing all the dates, themes, and everything soon. That will be a huge event with more than 500 participants that we are expecting. So yeah, we'll definitely love everyone to join.
It is about, you all will love it. And this idea is Aruna's idea. It's the token economy. You all know how difficult, companies are facing. And thank you, Aruna, for coming with such timely idea. And so we are expecting big, like a conference again. It's hybrid. All the, coding will be done or by Friday. And the Saturday we are planning to bring, so many discussions, and we are even thinking like some product ideas may come out of this. Thank you.
So those are the big events that are coming up. And thank you so much once again for joining us today, and thank you, Padma, for such providing such a great networking community, and thank you so much for the space, Bellevue City Hall, for providing a spectacular space. Thank you so much.
Chitra, you come here. This is my right hand, and this is my, like, I need both hands to do like this. This is about sponsors. That's what I'm going to talk. And Chitra will talk about the volunteers. These two are very essential to run a nonprofit. So sponsorships, we are getting few for our big day events, still monthly events. We are, so since, it's a very tiny team, we are putting all this together. There are great people are coming, great, speakers, so much, but please spread the word. And if somebody is really truly interested in sponsorships, please talk to me, because then I will show you the insights and we will cater it. Here is the thing. It's like, I always say this. Sponsoring Seattle Data is like buying food from PCC or some, you're investing in your local farmers like that. It's your local community. End of the day, it comes back to, our community, our students, our thing. So this is about sponsorships and now volunteers.
Yeah, yeah, we're always welcoming more and more volunteers. Like Padma was mentioning, we're a tiny team trying to put together big events, small, the monthly events, the hackathons, all going hand in hand, parallelly, simultaneously, and with minimal, outreach. So that's why our main help would be to spread the word. And any volunteers, as tiny as maybe you could post on LinkedIn, and we can still count you as a volunteer. You will all be eligible for certificates, posted in our websites. It's a great place to showcase your skills, write some articles, and in turn, you're also helping the community in some way or the other. Any tiny help is a great help. That's helping out 100 more people out there. So anybody who's interested, please reach out to one of us, and will be great. It will be great to have a conversation on. Thank you so much. And no further delay, we want to welcome Robin onto the stage. Can we all have a big round of applause for Robin? Thank you.
I don't know what makes me more tired, flying from Australia or all of the activities you guys have going on, trying to keep up with them. I'm going to play it by ear. I sort of prepared this thinking that I was talking to people that were going to represent their organizations. However, it sort of sounds like there's a lot more of individuals trying to figure out how to integrate into AI. Is that who here is here representing your company? And then who here is representing yourself, like trying to figure out how this works for you? Or both? Both. Perfect. Who would say today that you are AI savvy? That you would say my role, my function, my career is based on AI. Come on, you all have to raise your hand at this point, right? So my name is Robin Sutara. I am currently with Databricks. I have been with a small little company startup out of Bay Area. I have been with the company for almost 4 years. And my primary function right now is essentially workforce transformation. So I own transforming the Databricks workforce to be AI enabled. If you've ever tried to do that with 1,000 PhDs, not as easy as it sounds, right? And so what I'm going to share with you is some of the best practices and some of the lessons learned that we have taken as an organization. But I also want to make sure that we're translating in how do you think about your own career? How do you think about that path? My expertise really is around change management, organizational design, operating models. Drives my peers crazy that I drive for those things. Prior to Databricks, 25 years at Microsoft, so I see lots of familiar faces in the room and coming from that organization. But if that's okay, I would love for it to be interactive. So is that okay? I'm allowed to do that. So I'm going to present some stuff. Feel free to raise your hand, interrupt. I'll also try to make sure I have time for questions at the end. But what I was hoping to share with you is a little bit of what I'm seeing across the market, what I'm seeing across the industry. I think a year ago, any AI conversation that I had with any organization was, what model should I use? What tool should I use? What platform should I use? Should I do OpenAI? Should I do Anthropic? Like, how should I think about it? We just came out of our big data and AI summit with 35,000 attendees in San Francisco, and every conversation I had was about transformation of the people. How do we think about the workforce and the change management that has to happen within any company or organization to actually use AI? Because the question is no longer the models. Everybody has access to the models. The unique value proposition is actually the employees or the organization. So really what we've seen is that a majority of organizations, almost every organization is using AI in some capacity. I would say probably about 60% of them have stagnated, right? So they did a bunch of efforts around the last 12 to 18 months, rolled out a bunch of tools and systems, people started using them, but now they're trying to figure out what's the return on that investment? Like, how do we start to actually measure things other than just every employee gained 7 minutes on a Monday afternoon because we now have this tool or system to be able to use it? Those companies that have figured it out, though, are doing 1.7x revenue that that have not, those sort of laggards. And so there's clearly a return on the investment. It's just a matter of how do you turn it on. I do think agentic AI is going to spread this even further. I mean, when we talk about early renditions of what people were doing with AI, it was still very traditional AI, ML sort of automation motions. Agentic is now sort of turning all of that on its head. And so how we think about workforce at Databricks and trying to convert them is how do you take advantage of the agentic capabilities that exist within the platform now? Much to the chagrin of my CEO, who would tell you tech can solve everything, I finally got him to admit on the news that it is people that is actually the bigger hindrance. At these days, it is not technology that is precluding people from leveraging or taking advantage. Heck, even I built an agent last week, which was I know. I'm so proud of myself. I needed an executive admin. Mine quit, so I had to find something. So I just think where historically I would have had to put in that request, had somebody build something, an app or some sort of system or solution for me. Today, I can do it all myself inside the systems and tools that I have access to in natural language. So this thinking that technology is the hindrance is gone. Anybody within the workforce using natural language now has the capability to build. And so how we think about it inside Databricks is how do we drive a builder culture? What does it mean to be a builder? And I'll talk a little bit about what are some of those fundamentals. Everybody with me so far? You all agree people is sort of the biggest. Good. Now, the issue is, if you look at McKinsey or Core or BCG, a lot of them will report that there's still a skills shortage. Now, I would argue some of this 94%, they are still looking at a skills shortage from a traditional technology point of view, right? So if you look at the statistics and how they're breaking down the jobs and the roles, it's the traditional data science, it's the traditional data analyst, the data engineering functions. And so I do think that some of this would be smaller because even in natural language, you can build a data pipeline today. You don't necessarily have to be a traditional SQL background to be able to do those things. There is still a shortage of people. So we hear a lot about transitions of roles going away. I have to admit, every company I talk to, it's not about roles going away. It's about how do we shift and pivot the roles that we have today to take advantage of the technology and let them use AI in a net new way. Where we do see a majority of the organizations on what I'll call out here is that despite the fact that everybody's talking about agents, very few organizations actually have agents rolled out at scale in production. Lots of POCs, lots of pilots, but where organizations struggle is that they build these great things and then they struggle to actually do the change management that it takes to roll it out across the organization. And they view human readiness or capabilities or sort of willingness sometimes to adopt the technology is often the hindrance. So I think the way we originally approach change management, I would say many organizations would say it just takes an email, we'll send it out, we'll do a newsletter and give everybody a status update. Problem with that is it turned into the perpetual project, right? Like you get a status update to say, okay, we moved data set A from our old legacy platform to our new platform. And then the business would be sitting there, business users would be sitting there saying, this is the migration that is never going to end. Like you're never going to get my data. I'm never going to be able to use this or do anything with it. Then I saw a lot of organizations start to pivot and say, well, we just need to train everybody on everything. Like, just in case, let's train everybody with every tool, every system, every platform. And so then you saw this plethora of data 101, AI 101. Now, the problem was most organizations would roll this out, but individuals had trouble translating that into, well, what does that mean for me, right? So I would sit in a course. Everybody would get the same course and you would leave going, great, I got my checkbox. Same as compliance training. Who's ever taken compliance training? I can guarantee you the day after compliance training, somebody violates the policy, right? It's the same exact way. People will sit in these training sessions and they'll check all the boxes, but doing that mental judgment of and translation of what does that mean for my role and how do I switch into this new world of working is really, really difficult. So I'm going to give you sort of 4 things that I think can help move the needle in this space. I think the first one is own your good. Like, what does good look like for your role, for your function, for your organization? If you take the initiative to define what good in your role means and what AI can help you do and transform, you then control the narrative. If you wait for somebody else to tell you what good looks like, you're putting yourself on the back foot on somebody else now gets to say what AI is going to do in your current role or function. So how I tell my team to think about it is, if you were meeting expectations yesterday, you're not meeting expectations tomorrow unless you've done something different. Right? So what can you blow up? What process or workflow could you look at to say, if I now had access to these tools and systems that I didn't have when I built it, how would you do it differently? Now, in all fairness, I have to give my team the time, that's a tongue twister there, my team the time to be able to take the step back and be able to do that. And so I'm really trying to think about how do I make sure I'm creating across the ecosystem. Yes, we have all of these sellers and technical pre-sales and forward deployed engineers, but how do I give them enough time that they can come out of their day-to-day tasks and start to think about what they would reimagine or recreate? The other thing is we're really looking for net new talent, right? So as you think about this transiency between organizations, the unique value contribution that you can bring to that is your domain area of expertise, because technology is no longer the barrier. So it's, what do you understand about your business space? What do you understand about your domain, your industry, your component? Because you can now take that and create and build something new, bringing in a whole new net perspective. I'll give you maybe a second example. I brought in a brand new hire out of university, and I feel bad because that's a tough space to be in these days to find a role. The reason I hired him was not because he had domain area of expertise. It was because he was asking the why. Of all of my legacy employees, he was saying, why do we do it that way? Why did we build it that way? What, how does that work? Like, we have the data access here. Why did you decide to do it 5 different copies of the data before we actually got to the solution? So think about that sort of unique value proposition of nobody else has your experience, your domain expertise, because now the technology isn't the limiting factor for you to get that role. Does that make sense? The second is the gap these days is not product knowledge. I think historically Databricks would have, even at Microsoft, we would have been like, well, we'll just teach everybody SQL. We'll teach everybody Python. We'll teach everybody insert product name here. The problem is these days with AI, you can find that answer faster than I can train anybody to be able to do it. I just went through, we're really thinking about what does FY30, our fiscal year 30 look like, and what sort of transformation do we have to take employees on to get to what that point looks like. And what we came to realize as we did all of these interviews is that people are not attending a class to learn something necessarily. What they are doing is leveraging AI and leveraging the class to get the network, the connectivity, a network of resources that you can turn to help you understand how to apply the judgment, right? How to actually now translate that product thing into the actual outcome that you're looking to drive. And so it's not just a certification path anymore. It is now really thinking about how do you leverage training and these types of opportunities to connect with others that builds your domain expertise, that helps you determine what that judgment is. Because you're going to go ask Claude or ChatGPT, how does product X work? Then you're going to go to your network and resource to say, hey, I'm trying to solve this problem. Help me understand, how did you do it, and how did you apply the technology to be able to do that? Does that one make sense? Everybody agree? Disagree? Agree? I knew Parachute would have a question. Yeah.
So this is the problem that I'm seeing in my organization as well, right? Like there is, especially in a product management organization,
You guys probably can't hear him as well.
management organization, what I'm seeing is the way to leverage AI is very superficial right now. How do you actually, we are tracking, like, for the love of God, we track tokens, right? Like how, who is using how many tokens. And many times I see that that behavior is driving, can I write something and just to consume token, right? The real value addition comes from they are using it for some use cases. How you're thinking about that, how you're structuring that for specific your organization and across Databricks. I know you for long, so I know you have an answer for it.
Can I defer it for maybe 2 more slides, and then I will tell exactly about how do you move from productivity to actions.
I knew you have the answer.
Of course, we knew you were going to ask about so we'll have to put it ahead of time. So I will quickly then go through my other 2 truths because we really want to get into that. I think capability is really not like, and the real gap exists in how do we make sure that we're helping the workforce understand how to do the application of it. So it's not just rolling out another tool. I think like Databricks came out with a model DPRX that was the top model for 2 whole weeks, and then another model displaced it, right? Tools are moving so quickly that you have to stop grounding AI success or value contribution into rolling out a specific tool or the consumption of a specific tool. And so we're really trying to think about it. How do we think about building it around the people and their existing workflows? And with that, it's like hyper personalized. How do we make sure it's just in time as opposed to just in case? So we are thinking about things like what we have done internally is really started to leverage the ecosystem and what we know about our employees based on their work product, the things that they're doing inside and outside the company, the use cases that they've actually built and been able to deliver. We are actually now using AI to pull it all into a single system that we call Skills Navigator, so that we can start to actually place the best resource on the best jobs associated with specific customers based on where their expertise and their domain knowledge is. We also can identify where there are gaps are. So that if we see, for example, that there's a deficiency in lake base, it will now start to target my lake base training only on the employees that need to get ramped up on that product, as opposed to rolling out a singular class to the entire workforce at the same time. So we're really trying to rethink, how do we put inside the system and tools? How do we use the knowledge that we already have? Just so you know, I'm also pushing the product group to think about this for customers. You're on the Databricks platform, we should be able to tell how well your data engineering team is leveraging the platform. If you're not getting their best productivity or gains or optimization out of it, how do we give you just-in-time training or give them just-in-time information so that they're using the product more efficiently? So I think the work itself is changing, right? I do think very early on it was all about the tools. It was all about how many tokens are you using. I got a dashboard every morning that told me exactly who was spending how much money, how many tokens were they burning through. Where we struggled was, how do you actually now change that into value contribution? I say pass the question to you, right? How should I think about it from a value contribution point of view? And how we thought about it was, how do you get away from just productivity gains, and this is your sort of assistant, into a co-create mode? And that's sort of where we are now. And to do that, you have to think about it from the workflow and process. So it's less about the individual productivity that gains that you get, because you would measure that yourself. What we are starting to measure is, what are the things that you create that are now reusable, so that we actually see it coming out of the catalog into others. You built a skill in Genie or Claude. I now see 6 other people across the company are using that same skill to build agent X, Y, and Z, that we can sort of roll that out to. So that's where we are today, is really starting to think about this midpoint. It's the workflow transformation. Now, the interesting part is, this often doesn't require us to rethink organizational design, right? So I would say with tool adoption, it's very much organization stays exactly the same. Very little, more now I'm getting into the next slide. Let me go over there. For most organizations, they exist at this first one, right? This sort of scalar motion. Organization stays exactly the same, roles stay the same, workforce isn't transitioning very much, but it's all about individual productivity gain. What tools and systems are they using? And then how do we measure the return based on the things that they're now able to do that they weren't able to do before? So I would say half of my team today will still tell me I'm too busy to do X. And so then my question to them is always, like, what are you too busy doing that you can't right, this experiment? I want to give you time for experimentation and innovation. You're telling me you're too busy. What are the things you're too busy with? And then we'll sort of go through those workflows to say, how many of those things could you automate? How many could we use traditional AI and ML to solve for? How many of them has somebody else built a skill or capability that you're not taking advantage of, to be able to get the productivity gains that you need to rethink your workflows and processes? So that's been a real eye-opener over the last 6 months. But it requires the leaders to actually be equipped and prepared to go and ask their teams to say exactly these types of questions. Like, what are you so busy doing? Why are you not taking advantage? It's not, I don't care if you spend $5 in tokens or you spend 500 in tokens. What's the output that you have to be able to do for it, and what time you need for it? Where we are is sort of, in our journey, is more what I would call reinventors. So we are starting to rethink, what are the roles and functions that we've assigned within the team? Should we start to think about reorganization? Should we start to think about moving talent that has domain area expertise from team A to team B to help solve this problem, because I gained optimizations on this team? I do see probably quite a few customers are starting to do that transition from just productivity gains to now doing workflow and process gains. And so now they're really starting to think about, how do we think about staff augmentation via agents and AI, as opposed to just being a singular productivity tool to be able to gain. Very few customers that I talk to are actually AI native operators, and I should probably caveat, for most organizations, you probably have pockets of teams that are at each of these stages of maturity. I have yet to meet any organization that says we're, unless maybe it's 2 employees, that says we're completely homogeneous, right? That we're all at the same level of capability to be able to do it. But it is interesting to talk to some of these large companies who are talking about, we have a agentic workforce. So we have completely rebuilt our organizational design, that I have a single manager with only agentic employees. They all have employee numbers.
but your manager's also doing things like performance managing, right? Like you've hired them, you're training them, you're onboarding them, you're monitoring their work product, you're firing them when they don't work. Like there is that the whole organizational structure has been built with agents in mind. How many of you would say you're a scaler? Like you're still just getting productivity gains? You can even be between, it's okay. Reinventor, or ish between the two. Okay. How many of you are AI native? You have a whole little army of agents working at your house that's doing your dishes right now. Let's stop factoring here. So I do think for most organizations, there is some level of maturity that comes in this data and AI journey. Many organizations, I do think, are definitely data aware at this point, right? They have some level of knowledge. They no longer are we having the battles of the value of data. I would say 2 years ago, we still had trouble getting people to believe that data was valuable. I have yet to have that conversation these days. Every organization sees value out of the data. Now we start to talk about data enabled, like how do you make sure that you have the foundations and fundamentals in place? Now I will caveat this to say, for many organizations, this doesn't mean that you have your 150-year-old Teradata right migrated into the cloud. Like that's just probably never going to happen. You're going to have complex environments. I think I still have an Access database sitting on my desk at home, right? So how do you start to think about what are the things that you actually have to think about modernization? So foundations and fundamentals are what are the basic criteria you need to innovate and create something new and do it in a safe, controlled way to minimize the risk exposure that you have. So that's where I sort of see data enabled is you still have some AI, you have the foundations in place, you're starting to build those initial sort of use cases, you're getting value proposition out of it, but there's still some gaps that remain. Then you have data savvy. These are the people who are actually embedding AI in almost every workflow. I definitely actually tend to see it's my newer employees that do this really, really well because they come in again with that fresh perspective, so they're rethinking the processes and the workflows from the beginning. I am I was an old person. I am old. I am one of those people that's super hard to change, right? Like my habits. I enjoy doing some tasks a specific way. And so there are times where you have to push yourself outside of your comfort zone. This is why all of your New Year's resolutions have probably expired by now. Like maybe half of them, a third of them. It is a skill that you have to work on all the time to think about what did I do today that I can do differently tomorrow because I'm going to use the technology that I now have available to me. And you have to push yourself outside of your comfort zone. I told my boss today, I said, if I feel like I wake up every morning thinking, oh my God, they're going to fire me. You're going to realize I really shouldn't be hired at this company and I'm not really going to need to be reinventing myself. And so we really sort of taken this position of everybody across the company has to feel that level of discomfort. And sort of everyone does, I think, in this era. And so it's a good thing. I guess it's not, I mean, it's not really negative. It is a good thing that you do feel like you don't know everything, that you're not comfortable. I think everybody faces that right now. And we're all continuing to work there together. And then at some point, we will see what we call data and AI native, right? Essentially, agents will augment teams. You will have an entire workforce, that's completely agentic. My husband still works at Microsoft in Azure Virtual Desktop, and he talks about his army of agents. So he has to go and check on his YOLO agent, right? Apparently, has created havoc and chaos, and then he has to go clean up after it. So I do think we will see that at some point, and we continue developing inside, and we'll see the workforce do that. For most companies, when you ask like, how do I get started? I think the first thing is understanding where is your maturity. Can you make sure that you're helping understand that it's okay that you don't know it all? I think in today's era, it's absolutely okay to say that I don't know. The question is, what do you do in order to try to figure it out? And for most individuals then or organizations, it's trying to figure out the 2 or 3 things that you can tackle and go solve for. Even if it is just an immediate productivity gain, even if it is a workflow that your team currently follows that you're trying to figure out how do you reinvent and provide that into the organization, because you can't fix what you're not aware of, right? And so how do you really start to think about that? From there, then you can really start to build and enable and start to help and train and bring each other along on the journey. And then at some point, you then get to the point where everything is actually able to be scaled and embedded into existing workflows. You're building it from the very beginning with AI in mind to be able to deliver against it. So then usually how I close with most organizations is talking about, right, everybody has access to the same models. Your competitors have the same models that you do. My grandmother has the same models that you do. Your competitive advantage is actually your unique value contribution that you bring to the organization, your experience, your domain knowledge, your expertise. Now, how do you make sure that your organization is taking advantage of that with AI? So, do I still, I know I'm at time, but if you want.
Yeah, another 5 to 7 minutes.
So that's all I have content. I would love to open it up. I guess questions if anybody wants. You're on the edge, or do you want to ask a question? Yeah.
I got yeah. Give me this thing. We're gonna pop something.
Hi.
So before you painted his absolutely fascinating. But I think about the individual contributor perspective and um, how we are relying on the domain expertise of individual contributors.
Yep.
And I'm curious about how you reconcile that with traditional like console-based element and change management boards and how we interplay that with, like go-to-market enablement.
Yeah.
Because it's funny, we also painted has GTM and sales rep pulling your change control board, with the mistakes that I'm curious about that's play out.
Yeah.
And your
So the reality is I work at a privately held company, which gives me a little bit of flexibility. I would say if I were doing the same job at Microsoft, how we sort of look at it, and I'm being nonchalant. We definitely have risks and controls in place. We have set up the centralized governance. Every organization that I talk to, like, hey, this is the rosy picture on how you get there. But for me, historically, organizations have used governance as a risk control, right? So they say, don't innovate. And this is what happened when ChatGPT came out. Everybody had access to it. Every organization lost their minds and said, don't do anything, don't use it. Right? Because we haven't set up the right controls and blah, blah, blah. I work with a fabulous field CISO at my organization who's created like the NIST standard for the 39 factors for AI risk. And what are the technical controls that you can put in place to mitigate those risks? And then how do you really manage against the risks that matter to the organization? Conversations I'm having is, that was a risk yesterday. Is it still a risk today? Because that's where I think the more interesting part is. Maybe by education, I should tell you I'm an intellectual property attorney, so I love this stuff. But I would essentially tell you, like, look, just because 75 years ago you said you couldn't use that data, like the fact that after GDPR, every legal and compliance office came down and said, absolutely no customer data anywhere. And it's like, really? Like, if I anonymize it and I figure out a way to aggregate it in a way, can I recreate synthetic data? Like, there's lots of ways that you can work around that. So I find that governance has to be centrally managed. There has to be the right platform and foundations that we talked about in place for you to be able to manage that. And I will caveat that I'm only talking about governance from a risk access control at this point, not master data management, data quality, data. Anything that nobody knows what to put into, they put in the data governance office and they try to figure it out. So I would say for most organizations, I'm sort of pushing back to say, yes, you manage it locally or centrally, and you don't federate that into the business. But are we being overly prohibitive for the business to innovate because we've set too many controls in place and they don't have access to the data and capabilities that they need to be able to? And so I'm finding lots of organizations are rethinking like, oh, maybe we did lock it down like too hard. Now, how do we think about? Now, inside Databricks, we have a centralized we manage it via log food. So we have access controls in place. So I can only innovate against the data that I already have access to in the first place. Now, when I first started the company, I could see everything. Now I can't see everything. So I think it comes with some level of maturity. And then how do you make sure that you set that up again in a central? The central team has to own the governance. They have to negotiate with the business, with legal, with compliance, IT to make sure you're setting the right controls in place.
Do they have to negotiate on
Yeah. Yep.
And the second factor, secondary leadership, and they're arguing against the difference with the national.
Yeah.
So deeply into.
Yeah.
We continually have to put safeguards of it to make anything understand. You experience that.
So we've tried to over pivot, and my friends at Microsoft will remember. So when we worked in Azure Data, there were 28 product lines in Azure Data. Yeah, SQL Server on-prem all the way up to Purview. Every one of those products, we had, I don't know, 20 VPs, like 20 executive leaders. They could not even agree what color the sky was, much less what were the risk and controls that we were going to put in place. So one of the very first things I had to do was, okay, we're going to get aligned on some level of standards. You're going to agree to disagree, but we're going to commit that these are the fundamental requirements of where we're going to draw the lines so that people, if they're below the line, can innovate. They can innovate on their own. They don't have to get permission. If it's above that, we create an actual process and system that allows them to escalate whatever the business justification is. That first work has to happen at the executive level. So when I moved to the UK and I took on the chief data officer of Microsoft UK, first thing I did was I told the CEO, every one of your leaders needs to have a representation on the governance board. So we set the standards before we start. Otherwise, then you're debating every use case, every innovation, every tool, every project, et cetera. And so you try to get away from that. Exactly. Ooh, yeah, that's a horrible analogy, but yeah.
Yeah, I have a question that sounds related to before. Data for individual contributors within a company. But what I'm more interested in is companies who have like intellectual property, like their source code or trade secrets or things like that, that they're like, at least a few years ago, don't you dare touch us with AI because they're going to ingest that and it's going to come out into the public internet. And all of a sudden our secrets are going to be out there when, some guy on his computer is vibe coding, health app or something like that. And so my question is, how do companies get beyond, like particularly ones in sensitive industries that need some sort of protection for their internal data? How do they get beyond that kind of block with using AI in their business?
So it comes down to the governance and controls, the access controls you put up in the first place. So for me as an individual contributor, I would not expect to have access to lake-based source code, right? Like I don't need to have access to it. And even if I innovate, nothing I innovate is going to help change how we develop a product, et cetera. The people that need access to the Coca-Cola recipe are probably the people that are experimenting and innovating with the Coca-Cola recipe, right? So there's some level of legal and right, there's probably some sort of legal contractual obligations that you have with those employees who have access to that data. But I find that many organizations, when you think about AI innovation, it aligns with whatever your data access controls are. It's like just because we want you to innovate doesn't mean, oh my gosh, you now have access to everything across the organization. You have access to exactly what you already had access to. Now, how do you innovate in your domain, in your area of expertise with what you have permissions for?
Yeah, I think my question though is more around like going the other way. Like, do these governance controls also affect how data flows back into the training of these models?
I think, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
bi-direction.
Gotcha. So there is contractually like guards against data flowing backwards. Like they'll get. Okay, that makes sense.
Thank you, Robin.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
We can address further questions to Robin towards the end after all our speaker panel.
I was going to say, apologies, I have like a 7 p.m. I love working global roles. I have a 7 p.m. call, but please feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. More than happy to connect with you. We'll set up time, answer questions, but thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much. Can we please invite Rajesh onto the stage for his next presentation?
Wow, what a presentation from Robin. So, quite eccentric, and I think it went very fast paced. I'll be a bit slow. Okay. So, see, I think from the contextual perspective, what Robin mentioned is more about how within the organization, how AI adoption is there, what kind of people related and other learning should be there within the organization. I'll give you a different perspective. So, me, I work for a bank and I used to work for some government as well. I came from Australia. Um, so, my role is as a technical advisor for the business and a technical custodian. Is it better now?
Yeah.
Okay. So my role is a technical advisor to the business and a technical custodian to the products which we are consuming within the banks and organization. So it's a bit heavy role because I mean, my role in particular is make sure as a gatekeeper, right money is spent on the right tools. Okay, and that's the custodianship gravity I maintain. So today I talk about the sovereign identity in the autonomous AI era. So primarily, what I'm uh, going to talk about is give you a couple of questions at the end of the sessions that will deal with like okay how okay, once we adapt or how we adapt is fine, but before we adapt some kind of technology into the landscape, what compliance and regulatory frameworks will come into shape. So I'll talk about that at a high level. So for AI to be evolving within any organization, right? So we have some controls, should have some controls in place, and we are at the inversion. So previously we used to have like some workforce, couple of people working around it, and some API calls. So it's like more about humans and identities around humans. But now we're entering with the agentic AI. We are entering with 1:500 kind of inversion. So that's massive, and what controls we had before will not work now. So how and why we need to deal with this kind of inversion, that's the core crux of this next couple of slides I'll be talking about. So I'll talk about the regulatory frameworks, how they are evolving, how governments and standards are evolving, and what are the key metrics these standards are looking at for any bank or any regulatory organization like government should adopt. So yeah, so again, as I mentioned, like the verification void. So previously, everything we are talking about is human identity based. So imagine a warehouse, right? I was talking before I entered this room. Like imagine Amazon warehouse completely run by humans. So all the racks are organized by A to Z order or maybe some kind of weight order. Primarily, the entire warehouse is based on how humans operate. But when it comes to the robotic warehouses, right, like where everything is different. So even the robots designed their own ways of different ways of working in that warehouse for the optimal like fast logistics within the warehouse. Similarly, what happens now is like checking the identity controls based on human parameters and human based metrics is not the case. So everything should change when we are trying to adopt at scale, especially all the agentic AI. So there is a lot of money. Business is ready to invest. So I talk to business from time to time to understand what their appetite to get into the agentic AI and all these things, and they are ready. But the compliance is not ready. All the regulators, all the compliance related boards, they are not ready. So what if a agent mutates once it crosses the perimeter? Okay, what is responsible ethical AI means? So this is stopping us. Like it's not like the adoption at scale is not because of products. I think all big product teams across the world are doing their best to scale AI. Okay, and companies and businesses are willing to accept AI. Okay, and augment human like effectiveness with AI. With compliance and the regulatory bodies are not. The key question is how you mathematically prove. How you mathematically prove. That's the key point. So some AI agent will not mutate once it crosses the parameter. So there are a lot of discussions and research going on around, and my research, I mean my area of interest is talking to researchers, talking to regulators, talking to compliance boards, and understand what's their perspective is, and bring back that knowledge to the technical advisory board, and then convert that into some actionable outcomes. So I'll give some of those perspectives here, so that by the end of this session you can go with some questions which are related. So yeah, I mean, So there are a couple of things I'll mention. Things like the DORA 2025 APRA is from like Australian. It's a CPS 234 Act, and there are some other acts as well that are restricting the overall adoption of AI. Like to make sure like we should mathematically prove what we are trying to do. Okay, and one of the key things that came up recently is like again blockchain as a technology is sourcing or surfacing up. So can we use salt bond tokens? How do we engage or how much say that root the identity of any agent into architecture of the chips, not on the surface layer or at a programmable layer. Can we route the architecture to the chip layer? Okay, so sovereign identity at the root of the silicon is something that is coming as a mandate across standards. So which is like some of these things you can, if you reach out to me, I can share my knowledge on that. But software identification of identities is becoming obsolete. Okay, and many standards are suggesting to go sovereign, to go deeper at a chip layer, identify everything at a chip layer, at a local layer rather than at the cloud. So these are some frameworks that are evolving. So you can, so that's the compliance trap which I want to talk about. And another important thing is like we all invest, right? Like we have long-term strategy, short-term strategy. Unfortunately, hackers also have some long-term strategy. They are investing a lot in the long-term strategy. They're hacking now, and with the hope that once quantum evolves, they will decrypt later. So there's a lot of quantum related preparation going on in the compliance layer. So even like if you recently see, I think last month or this month, US president also had some uh, order, execution order on how entire US data can be cryptographically safe. So everything is, I mean, what I'm talking now is like will come into picture in couple of years. That's not, it's at a very high level standards. But Trump recently talked about the uh, how we can make sure entire data can be cryptographically safe. So hack now and decrypt later is something very big. So hackers are very clear. So there are a couple of standards that are evolving in this space. How we can cryptographically prove that even in the quantum era, our data is secured. So again, on those, there are a couple of standards which you can read, or I can share these slides with you guys later. But again, the current solution is coming out to be hardware rooted rather than software rooted, because if a imagine a situation, right? Like if agent logs into one particular like uh, straight to processing node and suddenly it got mutated, but the mutation is from another physical silicon altogether, then it's easy to identify because hard software related changes with the current knowledge we have can be like malfunction, but in the quantum era in particular. But if an AI agent is deep rooted to a silicon where it is running, I think that's one solution which these uh, latest standards are talking about. There's quite research going on in Stanford and in some of the Australian universities where I'm talking to. And another important thing is in the data sovereignty. See, everyone wants their data to be local, but everyone wants cloud. So there is a big, big gap between how you convert these two things. And again, there are a couple of standards and uh, both in across Europe, Australia, US. So how you solve this? Like you want your data to be local, but you want to use global cloud providers, especially not human taking care of this data, like all agents. Like you're giving the entire power to an agent, a agent, and still wants to be local. So there is a big gap here. Like these are different siloed dots, but there is a big gap. And again, there are some standards that are evolving. I'm doing some research on this, and um, most of these solutions are still yet to come, but problems are getting more clearer. So the key problems are very simple. Like you want a local run node, so how you make it really local? How do you ensure your AI agent is local, not going outside the parameter? How you make sure the sovereignty works? And that's one thing I think Saudi is investing a lot in this space because their try to invest in cybersecurity is high. And again, one of the key solutions that is surfacing is like hardware rooted, like agentic AI as a key enabler for all these things. Yeah, so I think one question come is like, why can't one, let's say AWS or Azure or someone can build everything for themselves? And another standards that are evolving is no business, especially the regulatory world, wants to be like one shop. Okay, so they want to go multi-cloud agnostic. So there are clear standards. It was a choice before, but now with agentic AI, it's becoming a standard. So we need to adhere as a regulatory body. We need to adhere that multi-cloud is there. Agent should run on multiple different clouds, deep rooted to the hardware level, especially the silicon level, so that even in quantum level hacking, we are somehow like trustable in that sense. What else I have? I think see, I just want to talking about rooted identity in this case, right? Let's look at it from a cloud perspective, right? I have a silicon rooted identity, and I'm running identity. There's multi-identity aspects that I have to look into, tenant context, and so on and so forth. Like, what is the thought of all different standardization agencies to handle multi-tenancy when it comes to agentic capabilities rooted to silicon? If I understand the question correct, so uh, your your question is at a high level, making sure like why silicon, right? Why at a silicon level? Because if it's rooted at a silicon level, once the machine is pulled off a rack and something else is put in, now the entire work purpose of work has been done across multiple components of that. Okay, unless you're good at Git, that's perfect. I will see. If you are thinking about physical theft, I don't know. I don't have the answer. But as long as from a software perspective, you can hack that silicon root of trust, I think you should be good. But if you are thinking about breaking the vault, I think that's a different ball game to answer. Please. Okay. We just want to know, like, what ideas in the industry right now? What is the production readiness for agentic identity? And if it's not, then what is the main blocker or the most difficult problem right now? Yes, so if I understand the question right, like what is the production readiness for the agent, or like what is the appetite for agentic identity by the business? So it is high. So even within organizations, I was talking to some of the government organizations and banks and insurance companies, and the business is ready to invest. So 100% clear, they want to be ahead of the game and they want to invest, and they want to augment with the existing players so that the readiness, the acceptance level and adoption level is faster. But as I mentioned, I think earlier, the compliance is not ready. So we are blocked by the compliance. We can't prove that at scale business is secured because of the agentic AI. That's my understanding of the problem. Yep.
Um, your first slide implies that, or rather, your presentation kind of implies that with root level cryptographic verification of the silicon, would you still envision a world where you would only have one single verification gate of, like verification of identity? Like once I have the agent log in, provide its like cryptographic key and announce who it is because it has a continuous root level signature, do you see a world where continuous verification of the agent throughout its activities in a given environment would be necessary?
Yeah, so I just repeat the question in a different way. So, uh, yeah, we have existing Entra and Ping and other IDPs which are securing our current layer of identity. And what these standards are, what we are envisioning as a solution is this root level, silicon level cryptography acts as a sidecar. So it doesn't increase the ingress or the activity to the main thing. But once you log in every 14 seconds or like, depending upon what kind of frequency you want to, you can go to this main IDPs, secure it again, ensure this agentic AI or agent is trying to be in this silicon zone and then keep tracking it, like managing how the throughput should be.
Yeah, I throw right plan. But if a and I might not fully understand the concept of the ingress here, but if an agent, an AI agent is responsible for communication between that, who would own the token costs associated to that interaction? Because there would have to be some kind of interaction from the AI agent at some level, correct?
See, I understand these are solutioning questions, but my presentation is purely based on like what kind of standards are evolving, so that these are good questions to be answered once the standards are matured enough and adopted by the whatever company we are in. You have a question? Yeah.
So for the agentic identities, beyond the idea of having a cryptographic, way of tracking each one of them, is there a standard being formulated about like what the registry or whatever would be actually how you would actually have a listing or some kind of criteria for what all those identities and how you would actually confirm that it's a trusted identity? So something beyond the actual what's the source of truth for actually what is the identities out there and what you would want to use them for?
I mean, again, this is my understanding of the research, but if I understand the question, so how the source of truth will cascade, and then at the time of execution of this agentic identity, agentic AI, like what will be the source of truth? So is that the question somewhere?
Yeah, or is there a standard being proposed with here's all my identities, but here's the registry of the identities and what they represent as far as permissions or, what the authorization is actually going to look like for those identities?
There is no standard to that specific, as per my knowledge yet. But what I understand is source of truth will be based on this blockchain again at some point, so that any soulbound token or some kind of sidecar and IDP and soulbound token will act as the primary source of truth. That's my understanding.
Hey, my name is Sundar. Nice hearing your perspective from security and other related topic. Mm, So, if privacy is so important for these compliances reasons, um, how about locally running or open sourced LLMs through which AI agents can be spun out? Would would that be any kind of solutions for this privacy?
See, I think these LLMs are open source and everything, so needs to be rewritten in such a way that it can run locally, okay, in the sovereign environment. So if it is not fitting that purpose, it will not. It is not serving that purpose. As simple as that. So we are at a stage like, and from a compliance perspective, these standards are set. From a regulatory perspective, there are some boundaries set. Then whatever the money business is willing to invest in agentic AI will be unlocked.
Thank you so much, Rajesh.
Thank you. Thanks all.
Thank you. We would like to invite the next speaker, Gajendra, for his next presentation.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for the previous presenters. Thanks to Rajesh for covering the topics and those intense questions. Of course, let's see how it goes with me because I don't have a lot of answers for the questions that you might have. We are all collectively learning this one. Am I too loud? It sounds like I'm too loud. It's fine. Okay. All right. Just an introduction about me. I'm Gajendra Babu Thokala. I'm a senior engineering leader at Apple. So been in this industry for like 18 years. Off lately into AI, like everyone does in this room, I believe. We're all figuring out a lot of things together. All right. Uh, Talking about the responsible AI, this is the universe that I could at least figure out so far. How many of you are seen this terminologies at least once or somewhere heard about it? Good. At least some hands up there, right? Some of you might have seen some part of it, but there's some new things which even I learned recently, like pro-social AI, when I was actually doing a program at Wharton. One of my professor, Dr. Cornelia, basically introduced me to pro-social, and I was trying to dig further and understand what those are. Still don't understand it like to an extent which I would expect, but I'm still learning, right? So that's what it is. I can talk more about the responsible AI and what I have learned so far, and I would like to share with you folks, and then we can have the conversation at the end, right? So, jumping in. So, I would like to start with this. Bad things can happen with AI use, right? I am sure most of you would agree. And I have picked some of the articles from the recent times. One of them that you see on the top left is basically about the deep fake that people have earned money from and doing so. That's one of them. And then there's a lot of job cut issues that has happened with use of AI. On the right side, it is more fatal, right? It's basically people have died for using some of the bots, and then there's some people have cases around it and things like that. So not to pinpoint on any company or anything like that, but instances like this can happen if we don't use the AI more responsibly. That's the intent, right? And even for me, right, not just AI, even in general, I would say certain times it has felt like, okay, you go and ask AI a question, it takes you to a direction, and then it leaves you somewhere and saying, oh, especially in case of health questions that I basically ask, it takes you to a point where it said, oh, you are diagnosed with something, which I'm perfectly fine, right? And I'm sure most of you have faced that as well, right? And especially in medical field, I really don't trust certain things. All right. So this is some of the survey results from the recent times from McKinsey and PEW. One thing I would like to highlight on the right side, you'll see 50% of Americans are more concerned than excited about the increased use of AI on daily use. And that's the fact, right? This is actual real survey that has happened. And then most of us might also be feeling the same. Okay, coming to the reality check, right? Anything that we develop as an AI model look great in demos, quietly disappear after 6 months. Why is that happening, right? Because the models fail for a lot of reasons. It could be like people have complained in the public use that saying, "Oh, this is not working. We need to shut it down for some reason," right? The auditing is not feasible. There's models that we are not able to explain whenever there is an incident. So such things can happen, and that's the reality that we are facing today, right? They could fail for many reasons, like I was mentioning, right? It could be because we are not able to explain it. Operationally, it cannot scale, or they could be like we are not able to account for certain things, and we are not able to gain the trust of the user for the AI. Why, right? I could probably give you like some of the examples here. There could be more. One of them is that models are generally trained on static data, right? but we are living in the real world where events basically come to us as we flow, right? It could be anything that comes to us. Like, say, if there's a security incident, if AI model, you go ask your AI model and say that, hey, I have an incident like this, what can I do? Okay, it knows only certain things, and it will tell you that this might be the reason. But in reality, that is not the one, because you have to be on top of security incidents. You need to know what is the latest updates that is happening in the industry as well. That's one thing. And the second thing is about ethics review that people generally do. Every large organizations or any mid-sized organizations, even now startups do that as well, right? They do have ethics review done once, and they feel like that we are very confident, but that's not the case. You will have to reconsider that and see how often we need to do and how do we keep it up to date and also into the practice. The third one is models are mostly accuracy focused, right? You're optimizing for accuracy all the time, and that's the measure that we do, right? We basically write, you go read any paper, people talk about, hey, my model or this particular paper is talking about accuracy at the end of the results, but that's not it all, right? We need to consider the edge cases in the real world, and then any unexpected scenarios might happen in the real world. So that's something that I would like to highlight. And then the last one is about the rollback plan that we need to consider, right? If something happens, bad happens, we should have the unplug option. Otherwise, I don't think we are actually putting the right AI in front of the public users. All right. So yeah, this is pretty much covering the same scenarios or things that I spoke about, where we are trying to experiment in the lab, which doesn't run on the real data sets. Rather, it runs on the static data sets. And then you take it to production. And the real users are using it, where the edge cases are being hit with, and then you have some issues and you have to pull the plug, right? I'll give you a simple mini failure example. Once I was reading some news and articles about it. Is an hiring model example. The scenario is that um, one of the company built a model for hiring model, and they deployed it for candidate screening, and within months they realized they had to pull it back. Why that happened, right? Because there's a lot of things that they couldn't explain. The lack of explainability of why it was super biased, because it was trained on certain gender, certain region. It couldn't give them a fair screening, so they had to pull it back. So I feel like they could have done better here in this case by not just like purely sticking onto the policy, rather doing something different on the engineering side of things. We'll talk about it. Yeah, I want to give a little bit of anatomy of the responsible AI failures. So anytime you see a company's failure, it comes up in the news. That's when you know, oh, there was a failure. Like the way I was talking about in the beginning about some of the articles that you might have seen, right? The media articles that you might have seen. So why that happens is like if you backtrack and see, because the AI model was deployed and that was running on a particular model, and that model was fed with data that was missing a lot of things. So that is the root cause, right? So we are going to the root cause of it. How do you get better is by getting the right foundations, which is the data. We'll talk about data in the next slides. Yeah, so I was talking about the AI ethics policy. Even if you have like a 40, 50 page of AI ethics policy, it's not going to help you, right? Even if you do a quarterly ethics committee reviews, it's not going to help you. So you need to be like evolving from there on. You need to be on top of things. And of course, you'll also have legal and compliance sign-offs. But if there is no enforcement into your data pipelines or in the real world, it's going to cause problems. That's the intent of the slide here. So let's talk about the social layer. I'll also talk about the pro-social a little bit after this. The social layer is very important, right? So there are a lot of certain things I want to highlight here. One of them is like we do AI, but is it AI for social good that we are trying to look at? Are we being very inclusive and making it accessible to the users? Are we doing equity by design, right? And then is it how impactful is it to the community? Is it really required, or are we deploying AI for the sake of deploying it? We might have to like think through it, step back and think if AI is not required, you don't have to do it. Some gentleman was mentioning about the token use. I think probably you were mentioning about it, right? I know that some of the companies measure employee success by saying, hey, are we burning too many tokens? I think we should probably rethink about it. Burning tokens is not the key. In my mind, the less the tokens you burn, but more productive that you can be is what we need to be considering, right? So that's exactly what the impact that we need to be creating. And of course, there should be a stakeholder voice that I would say using surveys and whatnot to figure out if that is exactly where we are trying to head to. You can probably skip this slide in the interest of time. All right. So pro-social AI. So what I mean by this is like beyond what we think AI does. Does it do any harm to the public or to the people? We should also measure one more thing, right? Do measurable good. That's what I mean by pro-social AI. So let me give you a clear example. People talk about going carbon neutral, right? If you're talking about any devices carbon neutral. There is also terms like carbon negative and carbon positive. So what pro-social AI is that it's one step above carbon neutral, right? If you say that we are going carbon positive, we are doing something better and good. So pro-social is something beyond what you think is AI is doing good. It is like you have to step up and say that, hey, this is pro-social AI, which means I'm taking an extra step to make sure that we're doing a measurable good to the public. Yeah, if you don't do this now, what's going to happen? Just want to share some story with you during my Microsoft days. I've been with Microsoft for more than a decade, and one of my last projects, I think, people were talking about is the Microsoft Purview. And previous to that, I was in the privacy GDPR projects a lot, right? What would have happened if Microsoft was not GDPR compliant? Is like, I mean, most of you might understand 4% revenue is what we pay as a fine. So does any company will pay, right? Now, if you look at what happens if we don't do AI responsibility, is definitely we will be with a lot of debt, which compounds like any other technical debt you might have in the project. And this is just an speculation of how much cost you're going to pay if you don't build the AI responsibly. It could be even higher, and it can keep going higher and higher, right? So I would like to just mention that step back when you actually build your models, you use agentic AI and think through how we want to build it responsibly rather than just doing AI for the sake of doing it.
Screen sharing is disconnected.
Oh, really? Okay, for the video. Sure. Yes, I didn't even know there was screen sharing. Thank you. Is it working now or?
No, actually, it's disconnected. I'll clear it up. Sorry.
Okay, all right. Yeah, sorry about that. All right. The next one I would like to talk about is how do we look at engineering, the responsible AI as an engineering discipline? This is the crux of what I want to talk about. So there are various aspects that you can think through, and I picked the top five ones which came to my mind. First one is the fairness. How do you design fairness as a testable property, treating bias as a bug rather than a philosophical issue? So this is very important. Like the case that we spoke about in the hiring case, we don't want to get biased in any case. I mean, you will be in trouble if you do it for lot and lot models. And then next one is the misuse resistance, right? How do you even actually avoid misuse is by detecting and mitigating the misuse that is happening. A lot of us don't even think about what if I deploy this model and it gets misused. The guardrails people talk about is very, very important, has to be in your planning, and it has to be there as part of your checklist. Otherwise, we will be in trouble when we build it. And then the data minimization aspect, right? It's very important. As you all understand, data minimization has to be one of the a primary thing where you don't collect data for sake of keeping it, but rather from the user consent, we should collect what is required, and then only after everybody agrees it, including the user, right? Otherwise, don't do it. And even if you collect some data, you think you should be mindful about the data lineage, versioning, and a lot of other factors on related to data minimization. And the other thing is explainable AI, right? Just want to share an example about it, or rather talk about the medical aspect of things, which is where the explainable AI is becoming very, very important. How many of you in this room trust using AI in medical field, right? So you are with me. Some of you are with me, right? Depends. Yes, it depends. Yeah, that is also a right answer to say, right? At this point of time, it depends comes because of the fact that if you ask me after 5 years or 10 years, I would be much more confident. Now, maybe not. For some of us, strictly a no, right? So that's how we are, right? Because AI is something that is still evolving, and we want it to give us clear answers and explain why it took that decision. That's when I get confident. Otherwise, I'm not at all confident. So that's something we need to be mindful about when we talk about AI in medical fields and other fields. And the next one is the operational responsibility. I'll talk about the operational responsibility in a bit. Yeah. So if you look at the core engineering block for all of these responsible AI I was talking about, I can probably split it into four of them. One of them is the data engineering, the model engineering, the deployment, the operational engineering. We will talk about each of them in a little more details here. Data engineering, this is where everything starts, right? So if I have to put it this way in a simple language, most of you might have heard garbage in, garbage out, value in, value out. I'll try to repeat it. So you look at it as if your data is bad and you're giving it a model, and you can't expect more, right? Because it knows what it knows. If it doesn't know anything, or it knows in a certain angle, you're asking it a question, it answered it, and you expect something else. So you are basically hallucinating yourself, not the model. So you have to be mindful about what data is being fed in. Are we doing the right job in terms of feeding in the data to the model and then asking it the right questions? That's very, very important. Yeah. So talking about the model, like I was mentioning, people are super focused on accuracy. But I would like to highlight a few things here which you should be mindful about. One of them is the shift in mindset. We should move, I think accuracy is really important in my mind, but we should think beyond that. Like, how do we do retraining if it is required? How do we do get the real time data for the models? How do you feed that? So I don't think everybody in this room or like probably in the industry is good at saying, hey, I have 100% of it available for you at real time, right? Because that has been a real concern for me as well. And of course, most of you would agree with that. Real time model training is very costly and it's not going to be feasible at this point of time, but I think we will be there in few years from now. And then I think, yeah, I spoke about the bias here. And then the deployment engineering, right? Where most of us definitely fail when we are doing at scale. So this is very important. Uh, I think we do a good job in terms of training the model, deploying the models, and hoping for the best. But beyond that, if you think, right, how do you do it responsibly is by shadow deployment, probably doing canary releases, gradual rollouts you want to do, and then also monitor it. Monitoring is something which most people don't do with the right metrics, right? Right metrics is very, very important. I'll talk about metrics in the next slide. What probably I think, and there will be a lot of metrics that you can think in, especially in terms of the AI world. And there is one more thing which is very important is involve humans where necessary. Don't ignore the fact that we are going to do 100% automation all the time. So that certain times fires back, and there's no way for you to actually go and correct certain things. And the fourth aspect was the operational engineering. As you understand, models degrade over time, and the shift can happen on data, and the drift can happen without even noticing it. So, if you can monitor it in first place and track it down, you'll be able to find it out. And then, if there is any abuse or misuses, you will have to find it out. And you can definitely do it if you put in a lot of efforts into the operational engineering as such. And of course, there are other things which you will have to do as well. I'll move on from here. So this is the metrics I was talking about. Traditionally, if you see, we were talking about what is the latency for this particular application. So if it was a web application, you say that, okay, milliseconds we can load the website. What is the throughput of this particular data pipeline? What would be the error rates for this particular system? So things like that were something that we used to monitor. I think now we should shift our thinking from traditional metrics to a responsible AI metrics. What those could be, right? Some of the examples is like fairness SLO. For the case that we took in terms of the hiring example, fairness SLO is one thing that we can definitely consider. Explainability for the medical cases that I was talking about, and how is the drift happening with the thresholds, right? That's another thing. And then the incident mean time to response is something we can consider as well. And there could be a lot of other metrics, but core intention here that I'm trying to express is that we should move from traditional metrics to the responsible AI metrics. These are some of the examples I was talking about: fairness drift and data integrity. How do you use and detect the abuse in the system? Okay, now talking about the maturity ladder. If you have to look at it holistically as an industry, where do we stand? Not many of us are at level 4, right? We are somewhere in between. There could be some folks who claim that, hey, we are at level 4, but not in all aspects is what I would imagine. And some of us are already at L0 or L1 sort of thing. So majority of them being in L1, I think we should all collectively march towards L4, but it takes time. It's not easy as we think. So that's something that I would like to highlight, right? What it takes, I think there are a lot of factors that we can discuss, but I think we are all aware that we need to get there with responsible AI, but we should probably instrument it and then govern it and then do a self-healing where we retrain the models in real time and then get all this fairness SLOs and things like that. So yeah, we will get there, but it is going to take time, is what my opinion is. The other very important aspect is the human in the loop, which I was mentioning previously as well, with shutdown ability. Think about it. There is a system. There is a system which you want to unplug when there is an issue that is happening with the public, especially in public AI and pro-social things that you want to do. All right, so the public AI I already spoke about. I'll skip this one. I'll probably skip this one as well. This is basically talking about how do you do the fairness drift at 2 a.m. But since there's interest of time, I'm just going to skip this one as well. I just like to leave you folks with this one. Responsible AI is not something you prove it once with a policy document. It is something you operate every day. I think there's some font issue here, but I read it out, so I should be good there. Uh, all right, so this is a similar thing. I'll probably in the interest of time, I'll take any questions if there are any. Sure, go on, please.
So, first question is all these frontier models we have today are trained with by So whatever you're proposing is meaning like we have to build a model in-house where we can actually have complete fairness or where we can actually define our own regulations on top of it. Is that the is that the is that what you are actually explaining when you said governance and fairness and all that? That's my first question. And the second question is about how do we actually solve the bias problem if we are using a frontier model? Is it more by regulating using prompt engineering, or do you have any other strategies around solving that problem? Or did you had any chance of looking into that issue?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I I feel like those two are very, very closely related enough. Uh, so if you look at why this bias is happening, it's because of the data that I was talking about, right? If you don't have enough data that you can train with, you talked about an example of the MIT, right? Why would that get biased is because most of us assume that, hey, we take data from MIT students or MIT professors or whatnot and try to give it to the model, and that's why the bias is happening. If you had a variety of information across the world, across the universities, I believe we can do better with the models. But I was also very interested in learning more about it. How can we do this without data? I think there are some model trainings that we can do, or we can probably use different mechanics, like especially too technical, but there's a smart model that if you're aware of the smart model, right? So it's basically it induces some of the synthetic data into the model, even though you don't have the real data. So I think we can think through some of the solutions like that, where we don't have enough data because the model is getting biased. You step back and figure out, hey, if it is getting biased, I have this fairness SLO that is there for me. How do I even solve that problem? Is by using some intelligent mechanisms like SMOT or whatnot, right? So we could do it. The thing is, we are not cognizant about whether we should do it or not. We just got data, we train it, and we move forward. So in my mind, it is feasible, but it takes time and efforts to get that done. Hope that answers your question.
Actually, I have follow-up question though.
Sure.
Sorry. The one thing the industry agrees on, I think everyone in this room also agrees on, is LLMs are meant for non-deterministic behavior, right? So we are shifting as industry from a model where we have deterministic behavior to a non-deterministic behavior. However, we uh, how how can we say that, hey, my system is 100% works all the time the way I expect it to, with
So
this with this
I
bias and with this everything around all the governance? If we are not agreeing to that non-deterministic behavior because agentic layer itself is non-deterministic, how are we solving that problem for a fairness or regulation or governance or something?
I think that's a very fair question. Thanks for answering the question. So the expectation is that we are moving from deterministic to non-deterministic, but expectation from the user is that we be deterministic, right?
Yeah,
That's the difference and gap that I see today. What I do is I go to LLM and I say that, hey, can you give me, for example, give me a convert this time to Australian time, right? What is that I'm expecting is basically it specifically gives me a particular date and time. What is that I'm trying to do? I'm trying to be very deterministic. I expect a deterministic response from it. It can or cannot, right? It has done a lot of mistakes a lot of times, and I've messed up not being presenting certain times, right? So that's the expectation gap from the user, not from the models or something. I think it's sort of training that we have to do ourselves. And certain times, what happens is that we also become like there's a concept of cognitive surrender. We basically surrender ourselves to the LLM, saying that, hey, now you're doing this, even though I know that 1% or 2% you are doing something wrong, I still go and surrender and get things done, right? it's okay to get done, but you have to be cognizant about, hey, it can do like 1% mistake because it's not very non-deterministic as such. Sounds good. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Okay, thank you. We want to now invite Parashit for his presentation. And thank you, Gajendra, for your talk.
So you guys hear? So, like, how we move towards more of the economics of AI? Like, we have talked about security, we have talked about governance, we have talked about the organizational changes. Now, what I want to shift towards is where we are seeing a recent topic of discussion in all the news recent is RTL and AI work. Like, let me ask this question too. How many of you guys who work in an organization, whether in an IC or whether you are driving an organization, you have been mandated to move forward with an AI first strategy? How many of you guys can say that you did, right? Now, how many of you guys can say what is the total ROI you will get for each of your initiatives?
I don't think anybody can say this.
No, it's not. And that's what I want to talk about. Because at the end of the day, it's not a charitable work that AI is doing. There has to be an ROI associated. And very few times in the past decades, we have seen a technology that has been so monumental in changing the way we look at software. So that's what we are going to spend the next 20 minutes or so. I want this conversation to be more interactive because this is not a research paper that I'm sharing with you. There are obviously some data points that I can share with you. But yeah, please. But it's equally important that it's interactive. So if you have questions, if you're dealing with something today, if you have a startup, how do you monetize it is the primary objective that we're trying to get. So while we are facing the technical issues. But let me give you a little bit about myself. So I've been in tech industry for 22 years, been in 3 continents, worked across various startups and large enterprises, spent a good chunk of my time in Seattle, almost 14, 15 years now. Started with the startup, then moved to Microsoft, been there for a couple of years, met few friends there, and then moved to Splunk. But more recently, I've also been advising startups with what happens. And what it gives me is a view how does companies who are at large scale, who have been scaling their technology, differs from how the or valid. What really values is it reducing my MTTR? If you're looking in a security domain, is it really resolving a ticket faster than you are now? If you're not able to justify that, it's not going to happen. The second thing is your COGS. COGS is going to be a critical component of it. As we talked about tokenomics a lot earlier today, the per token inference is what the surface looks like, but it goes beyond that. You have no longer you will have a fixed subscription cost that you can talk. You can look into the fixed subscription cost, but it's not going to give you the value that you're trying to drive. The COGS has to be at the task level. I talk to people from my friends at Microsoft. I talk to my people at Cisco. None of the financial models are currently going at that granular level. They are still thinking it from the perspective of if we deploy something, what is our fixed cost, what is our variable cost. They are not going and governing it at the level of tokens, at the level of MCP, at the level of outcome that is being driven by it. And that's a fundamental flaw if looking into the COG side. And obviously the business model. I'm going to talk a lot about this in the coming slides, so I will move to the next one. Before I go into the details, let's take a step back and talk about what are the 5 key reasons why we are seeing AI agentic adoption being slow. Some of them are already been discussed today, but there are top 5 reasons that if we ask anyone, and this has been validated across World Economic Forum and BCG, you talk it, you name it, they all say the same thing. The data quality is the biggest thing. Agents have this deterministic and non-deterministic behavior, but they are very confident. What it really means is that they will hallucinate, but they will hallucinate confidently. They will give you answers at a rapid speed, they will be wrong answers. So that has been like, trust me, when I use my agents, and sometimes I look into, I ask like, what are the sources? They give me 5 different answers, but they never give me source. That is a problem because the data they are fetching from is not right. This primarily means as an organization, if you're keeping data in silos, you will always get a wrong answer. So the data quality is the critical piece, and that has been validated by like nearly all the CIOs that you talk to. 52% said this is the number one problem that we have to solve. The other thing that we talked about a lot is governance and risk. One of the key things that has changed in earlier software and what we are seeing with agents is that these are agents are taking decisions. None of the earlier software revolution that we saw were taking decision on behalf of humans. The difference is how do you audit that? Who are you going to hold accountable if something goes wrong? What is the compliance? And we talked about the compliance security a lot today. But that is a critical part that is hindering the adoption. If you cannot go back and audit what happened, who did it, and hold someone accountable, then it's never going to get the adoption. Like a lot of time where we see that we move to production codes and others, the engineers are there. Yeah, I can put a lot of lines of code, but if I'm going to be responsible for it, it becomes a bottleneck because they have to go through the QA. And that has been an adoption blocker. The third one is we are going to talk a lot about today, but think about this. We talked about like last year in 2025, the spend on AI doubled. This year is projected to be triple from what it happened last year. So we are spending so much of money around it, but at the end, if we are not getting the returns, then it's not going to get the adoption. And that has going to be a big problem that we will address. The other things that I think Robin touched earlier today was skill and talent gap. So this is a clear paradox that we will think about. At one play, we say that AI is driving a lot of people getting fired. At the same time, we are saying there is a skill gap. How is that changing? It's not that AI is going to replace people. They require a new skill set. The typical example that I give in this is when typewriters were there and when the computer came. It was not that people were not writing more. It's the typewriter skill was old. People who knew computer, they were the people who actually got the most job. That's what's happening. We acquired a company, Galileo, and trust me, nearly 20 to 30% of the revenue actually comes from forward deployment engineers. What it means is that everyone wants to deploy AI agents. No one knows how to do that. And no matter how much we trust AI, actually there is humans who are in the loop who are deploying this in the customer side. So rather than thinking of this is going to take away the job, it's a new skill that we have to learn to survive and move forward. And that has been also been one of the key challenges and paradox as we think about the whole adoption. In org friction, it's one of the most well talked about. And recently, I don't know if you guys are following. I think yesterday or last week sometime, Wall Street Journal published an article on this, saying that like all the tech leaders now they are saying that this is not going to take your job away. And the reason behind that is if you lead with a fear factor, no one is going to use it. If you believe that like there is an internal resistance that is built in the organization. So the whole way to think about AI has been it's a cost cutting job. No, it's not a cost cutting technology. It's to create new values for our customers. It's to create new economy. That's the way it's like. Who's going to be like? It's like internet. The closest example I can think of what is internet. Are you going to be Barnes and Nobles or are you going to be the new Amazon? That's the question that we have to ask about it. And how you define the value around it. That's the key thing that's going to define the success and the failure around it. So that has been the conversation. Now let's talk a little bit more about pricing and monetization. I have spent considerable time at Microsoft, AWS, and this defining the pricing. Never I had this kind of challenge because generally there is always a reference point that you can go back to. This is something new. Like I was talking to my mentor recently. He was at Microsoft for 20, 30 years. He led the whole pricing thing. And I said, like, how are you thinking about it? He said, don't have an answer because I don't know how it's going to be measured. So size, the whole SaaS pricing that was built earlier, that was built for humans. Agents, it was never built for because the reason why SaaS pricing worked because it was predictable. You had number of seats that people sat in and you paid for it. That model no longer works in the world of age. So let's talk about why. What are the 5 things that are changing the dynamics there? As I said, users really doesn't make sense anymore. If you are building a software and you're selling per user, biggest challenge in that would be first, the number of users is going to decline over a period of time because there would be agents actually taking over. Second, no longer is the value aligned to a number of logins or who the end user is. It's actually driven by actions, not by the logins. So the value doesn't match anymore. There's burst in the nature of AI. So like this has been true in other parts of business as well, in data and others, where you see there is seasonality, but there is also cyclicality on business. What it means is that you're sometimes in Black Friday, you will see a lot of logins happening. You will see a lot of people actually going on board, and you will see all of a sudden spike in business. The whole serverless model was built around it. But when you think about agent, it's even more unpredictable because no matter how much you plan, you never know when what event is going to trigger an agent to go and automate. And that's why it becomes very difficult to plan for it. So it's not predictable at all, and hence your monetization needs to reflect it. Also, stack complexity. Now we can say that the stacks has been the similar. Even there was like when were general apps that were built, they had different stacks. They were layers of data, feud, app, and everything was there. But had we seen a new technology ever since like the web application, the 3-tier model was built, where your new technology is consuming 70 to 80% of your costs? It has not been there, and that's why a single event can trigger multiple billing cycles, and that is adding to it. And finally, when you're thinking about monetization, it's no longer that, hey, this is a workflow that is being completed. It's the outcome that really matters now. Unless we are able to solve for it, customers are not willing to pay. So this is one of the common themes that we are seeing. And in the market, these are some of the real vendors that we are seeing. There are examples that have been success, there are examples that has been failed, there are examples that we are scaling. The key difference is no one knows the answer. Even I don't know the answer what would be the real outcome. The thing is, every second day we have a new model. Every second day we have a new business that is being driven by it. So the pricing and the unit of monetization really reflects how we are going around it. So if you start with like when Gen AI came, the first thing was like we will do per user, Copilot, famous Microsoft example. We'll go to per user model. never got an adoption. Now we are seeing that it's not justified. Even at $30, people are willing to pay for it. Salesforce, if you think about it, it was a $2 per agent conversation. Very simple to understand, never got the adoption because it was very unpredictable, right? No one knew how much conversations are going to happen. You have to look not just from the perspective of is it simple to understand, but it is easy to size it, because at enterprise level, it's critical that customers are able to have an IT budget. Their budget is not going to change every hour. Their budget is an annual planning, at best biannual. It doesn't change as frequently as your agents are going to consume. That's why it's critical to think from that perspective. The other examples that you're seeing here is Gen agents. There are also examples of per agent, per outcome. There is also a credit model, which is going to be adopted very widely. Which the reason why credit model really works around is it solves for your predictability of your budget, yet it gives you the flexibility how you're going to consume. So Salesforce, they learned very quickly, and I'm hearing that Microsoft is also moving to the same thing, where you commit a dollar amount, it turns into a number of credits. And as you are building new products, as you are deploying new agents, the business outcome will draw down. So it becomes a debit card around which you fill the debit card, you have an annual debit card budget, and then you draw down for it as you are consuming goods. And that really changes the dynamics. It gives you predictability, yet the flexibility. Is it the final model? Hell no, it's not. Because now, Salesforce, if you look at it, they have a menu card. So if you do a conversation, it's going to be 2 cents. If it's going to be a ticket resolve, it's going to be 5 cents. No one will go through that mathematics every time they are going to budget it. But this is the model that we need till we know how the agents are going to behave. It's an uncharted territory that we all are in, and that's why it's going to be critical. The good news in this market is more forgiving than ever. Like, think about it. Within a year or so, 6 months or 8 months, Salesforce are able to launch 2 models. I have done it twice. By the time, I will tell you, generally pricing conversations, I have done it for like 15 years now. It used to be a 3 month conversation. You talk, you research, you build a proposal, you do the PNL analysis, and then you recommend. By the time I do that, it becomes a table stake. By the time we thought like, okay, we will go and charge for all the GenAI solutions that we are providing, it became table stake. No one wanted to pay for it. So the world is changing so fast, and that's why credit model also works in this scenario. Because in a credit model, you are not committing to a product, you're committing to a company. You have a dollar amount. As you're building new values, as you're building new products and agents, you're going to, you have a question?
More to the successful resolution, the intercompany model.
Yeah.
One thing, there seems to be, to me, so explain it to me, that seems like a niche set of companies who tend to use that based on the type of service they provide. But
Yeah.
it's a lot more.
Yeah. So I call this more of an outcome based pricing. So what it means is like you are driving not by the amount of compute you're consuming or the processes that you're following or the infrastructure that you're consuming. It's about the outcome. If you are resolving a ticket, that's only your pay, right? So it works, you're right. It works for a niche. It doesn't always work for everything. And that's why the credit model for enterprises really makes sense. Because now you can commit, and if you're like, I can talk from Splunk and Cisco perspective. There would be, we are launching something app build, right? Let's about think about that. If you are launching something where we are evolving new agents every second week, and those agents will have a specific outcome. Now, if you're an enterprise seller, every second week you cannot go and say like, hey, we launched a new agent that's going to solve a new problem. This is their pricing model. Let's have a contract around it. It's not going to work. So that's why. Sorry. Yeah. Yes, that's a great question. We are going to get to it in a moment. But to give your answer, this is where I earlier talked about. You need to measure your cogs at the outcome basis as well. So what generally happens is when you deploy an agent, it drives an outcome. So I will give a real example of MTTR, right? So if you are deploying, let's assume a security agent, that's going to go and do detection, triage, and resolution. What it means is that you will have to look into what is the MTTR resolution it drove, how much faster, how much time did you save, right? And then for each of that action, you will have to estimate how much of costs you are incurring around it. So for each action, generally when you use the telemetry data, you will be able to understand for each of the resolution that you did, how much of computes were consumed, how much of LLM tokens were invoked, and that's how you will do. Is it going to be? Yeah, obviously. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. SLM models that we are talking, we are going to get into in a, yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah. So both of the points are right. So there is always like, and I'm going to talk about in a moment. There is ways that you can optimize your costs. But you talked about SLM versus LLM. One of the major cost drivers that we are seeing is LLM cost. Not every task requires to go and call $100 billion parameter LLM. You can do it few million. Like Galileo that I talked about, the company that we acquired, that doesn't require to go and call LLMs. They have their own fine-tuned model specifically for observability use cases. That reduces your cost. But to your point, how do you attribute the cost? Is what the gentleman there said. It's about how do there are infrastructure costs that you can amortize, but there are also token costs that are variable. So you need to you literally have to go and build the PNL around it. And that's how it's going to work out. Uh, I think we have 5 minutes, so I will quickly go into the details on it. One of the things that I'm seeing from the economic perspective is critical. We have to think that it's AI is talked about in a general category. What it means is that there's two subcategories under it. One, there are products that are built for AI, and they are AI that is accelerating the value of existing products. And the way we monetize both of them is going to be very different, because one is net new TAM, it's a value creator. The other one is value accelerator. What we are talking about, like, can you improve the MTTR? That's a value accelerator. And there are companies, you can talk about percentage uplift, you can talk about different things, how you monetize that. But the other one, which is the net new TAM, which is product for AI, that's the new TAM that is going. And that's where it's not a red ocean, it's a blue ocean, where there is less competition. Think about AI defense, think about Galileo, think about other like OpenAI and others. These are the products that are built in market that actually accelerates that. And that's the one that we can capture more value around. Anyways, this is the 5 ways we actually go through when you're determining the monetization strategy of a product. And why it's critical is the first is the one that is most critical. We just talked about in AI world, what is the most critical part? You need to determine what is our internal business objective. Are we going for adoption? Are we going for revenue, or are we going for profitability? Those are the 3 questions we need to ask. This has been generally in tech industry, in commercial tech industry, or in consumer tech industry, it's all about adoption. But in AI world, because of the high costs involved, it's not a clear answer. But generally, as you go through a product lifecycle adoption, generally it starts with the adoption, then it goes to the revenue, and then finally you make the profit on this one. So one should be very clear how we go about that. The second is clear on the value that is being delivered. Like a lot of time when you think about, especially on agents, the conversation is around, is it going to be a productivity tool? It's going to be a new value creation. There is a lot of confusion. Sometimes the answer is both. When you're building the economic model around and price points around it, you need to know exactly how much is that. There are studies that will give you more clarity around it, how much the value is actually being delivered, and then you can deduce what is the price point you can go with it. The third one is the market benchmarking one. This is the most confusing one because there, unlike the previous software launches, there is no one model that really works for it. So you don't have a precedent that you can go and build around it. The other ones that we talked about, the COGS, we have spent a lot of time talking about. But the critical part on this one is one of the things that we see that people are missing is the go-to-market aspect of it. We talked about product, we talked about the value, we talked about how the COGS are going to be there, but we don't talk about how the go-to-market, how the sellers are going to sell. One of the things that is critical is how the seller's compensation is going to work around it, how your revenue would be reported. Those things are critical aspects that are generally overlooked, and that really differentiate from the winners and the persons who are in the early phases. Anyways, uh, this I think we talked a lot about it just now. How do we optimize the COGS? One of the things that we talked about is intelligent model routing, which primarily means that you have an architectural choice. Do we always need to go and call for an LLM? Can we have hyper-contextualized SLMs that we can use around? It really, the choice that you make on the models, even within the models, there are new models covering every day. Which models do you use? Just choosing the right model can really save you around 25x on your cost. The other things that we talked about is the fine tuning, hyper contextualizing there. Self hosting, we talked about the air gapped environment, right? When we're talking about the sovereignty, that is a critical part of it. If you are moving from OPEX to CAPEX, you can really save a lot of money. A lot of inference companies, they are buying a lot of GPUs and they are hoarding around it. But if you actually see that if you can self-host, you can drive a lot of value because you are hosting itself and you can drive a lot of inferences rather than paying it outside. Prompt engineering is another one. Like a lot of times we see that you have to go and sell a lot of context to the LLMs that consumes a lot of tokens. You can reduce that by developing caching mechanisms that will reduce the amount of tokens you are consuming. Now, obviously, this is more of an organizational thing. This is also a critical piece. What I have seen that like because everyone is driven to get a lot of adoption of AI, every business unit has their own IT budget and they will consume using that. So you will see that for the same task, people are creating multiple agents and they are paying for it. That's where the compliance really comes with. So we are on time. So I will leave this with three questions. And every company, every startup, every organization have a different answer for it. So first, be very clear which market are you playing in. Are you playing in the AI product or product for AI? The second is what is your competitive moat? And finally, if you are billing on per seat model, or is it going to be outcome based? What is the unit of metrics that you're going to monetize on? That is going to be the critical one. So with that, any other questions? I think we are just on time. Yeah, go ahead. So especially in the enterprise software, how about billing the agent through number of transactions? Like Concur, they charge on number of expense report, feature royalty. Yeah, it's very good model. It's being experimented around that you can do on a per transaction or per ticket close. The challenge on this is if you go and ask a CIO, how many tickets are you going to close? How many transactions you are going to do? It becomes a sizing challenge. So that is why that becomes an adoption barrier, because when you are especially selling to big enterprises like Walmart, if you go and ask them how much of transaction are you going to do, it's very difficult for people to know. And that's why what people are using right now is the credit model, because you commit a dollar amount, you have the predictability, but then you can go for each agent will have its outcome and they will be priced on a per outcome basis. That's how it works. Good question. Awesome.
Thank you, Parajit. We will also invite the other speakers so that they can address all their questions to
Sure.
any speaker they would like. So Rajesh and Gajendra, if you can. You can use this. Any questions from the audience?
Suppose gentleman on the left, Gajendra.
Yes.
Yeah, I had a question for Gajendra. You had the responsible AI deck, and I that was just my mental model. If I'm grabbing it correctly, is the goal to get to the info, or was it like depending on the use case? It's a hybrid model, right? Because I think what we are saying is that you don't want everything to be autonomous, which was what L4 was. You definitely want governance and all that. So, what was the intent? I hope I interpreted it correctly. That's was.
Yeah, thanks for the question and clarification there. So the intent is like depending on the use case, depending on the industry, I think the level we want to be at will be different. There are certain things definitely won't be all the way up, and there are certain things we are somewhere midway. I mean, it all depends on how you pursue it and how the industries basically are trying to get level up as much as possible, right? Everybody want to get completely autonomous, but there are certain things which we can't be autonomous, and we want humans to be in the loop most of the times as well, right? So the intent is to make sure that we pick the right use case, march towards the autonomous as such, and see how much percentage we can actually do and how much we really want to keep human in the loop. That's it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I had, oh, sorry, I had a related question about like these levels of AI maturity and responsibility. I mean, you say that most people just kind of stop at L1 and are kind of content with that, whether or not they should be. Do you have any like documented examples of organizations that have actually achieved L4, or is that more theoretical at this point?
I uh, personally, I think I did read certain articles, certain things to be able to tell certain information, but I'm not at a stage where I can go and pick an example exactly saying that they are on that level. Because I myself am trying to understand where I am, honestly, in terms of like where do my use cases stand, how I am implemented the responsible AI and sort of thing. So I think it's sometimes it is not exactly that you have to be at that level, it's also the range that you have to be at. It's always the comparison that you basically do that with your competitors mostly, saying that hey, where do they stand? Where do I stand in terms of the automation? Is it like even achievable to get like 100% automation, right? If it is not, then you are actually comparing with your competitors to figure out, hey, if they are at that particular level, I'm probably at that level as well. Just like I guess you can get.
Okay, so it's more like a kind of a relative scale as opposed to like we've achieved this or whatever. It's kind of fluid, kind of relative to like the industry. So kind of what you're saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So just to add to it, right? I mean, if you look at, we are all in these S curves, right?
Mhm.
Especially AI, we are in multiple S curves. To understand what is an S curve, the value that we bring in is super low. It starts with low, and then we keep going up. There is a saturation level that we reach. Take case mobile, right? We first started, the value people were thinking, oh, this is going to fly a lot, but we are at a stage where we can definitely say it's at everybody has a mobile now, everybody can do emails, PowerPoints, and presentations and whatnot. So we already reached that saturation, and AI is at the stage where we have multiple S curves that are happening at the same time. We had RAG models, we had agent AI now. There are so many things that are coming up new. We have multiple S curves, and we don't know where is saturation level. And everybody, every AI stuff has different heights to that S curves. So the S curve swarm is what I would say.
Okay, that makes sense.
Any questions from the audience?
This is for Parikshit. Uh, have you have you seen an example of in the agentic AI and how we are driving the business outcomes? And uh, have you seen a profitable model in anything that you spoke about?
That's a great question. I don't think so. The reason is not just because we are not pricing it right. We are optimizing for adoption. If you think from any enterprise or any company or any board of direction, number of the first thing that they report on is what is your AI adoption. You're not talking about how much revenue you are making. The industry is going to change. My prediction is next 6 to 12 months, the industry parameters are going to change. Because if you're not profitable, they are not going to invest any further. So that is going to be now, it's all about adoption. How many people are using, how many agents are being built, how many agents are being deployed. That's where the industry is thinking. I'm seeing some early signs where now I have heard that even at Microsoft, they're saying like, it's enough. We need to say that if you're building agents, what's the outcome you're driving? And that kind of financial discipline is going to flow. And I think in next 6 months, we are going to see a tectonic shift where people will not talk about adoption. And that's when the profitability will kick in.
I can actually add to that. The numbers that we're seeing is just 30,000 minus 30,000 margin losses, optimizing to minus hundreds, 100,000. That's the numbers that you're looking at. So it's a very it's capex investments, not opex ready yet.
Yeah. And that has been a valid business model for consumer business. In enterprise, this is the first few times I've seen Lambda was serverless was the first one that actually had a, but it was the runway was more of like 6 months rather than a 3 to 4 year, what we are seeing with agentic solution.
Actually, to your point on the agent proliferation, yeah, to you. Agent proliferation and the identity crisis, right? There was a time at Microsoft when we scaled to managed identities. The identity provider couldn't scale, and now that was basically like a few apps, like apps across deployed across all hosts. Agent proliferation is like multitudes times higher than that. So the identity providers cannot scale at that point. So it's a huge limitation right now. But that was one of the questions that was asked to you a little while earlier on identity proliferation. Sorry, agent proliferation and identity. But yeah,
Um,
it was not a question. It was basically a discussion, continuation of discussion.
I'm not picking on Meta, but I'm just taking examples from them. So Meta is one of the very successful companies in using AI in ad targeting, and their profitability and revenues increased exponentially. So first question is, can other companies replicate that? Or that is one of the most notable success stories.
Yeah. You have a second part to that?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. The second question is, uh, till last 2 weeks before, all the news is everybody was talking about there is so much demand for compute, and there is not enough compute, and they went on investing a lot of money and building it, and there are a lot of back orders, etc. But just 1 week back, Meta came and said that they have excess compute now and they want to sell it to others. So, what is the truth in the industry? Is really there is so much demand for the compute, or just people are making it up and pumping up things?
It's a hoarding mentality. That's what's happening. So this is like you may remember the pandemic time when the toilet papers were running out, and then people were hoarding it, and then no one knew how when they are going to use it all. That's what's happening with the GPUs right now. The inference cost, as the model becomes smarter, the inference cost required for GPU is going to go down. You may remember DeepSeek, like that was launched, I think, last year, and all of a sudden, Nvidia stock tumbled by 20% that day. That is because of that. Because of compliance reasons, we didn't use that. But as models are getting smarter, they will consume less and less uh, compute capacity. And SLMs would be also one of the things that is going to drive. So, as I said earlier, in when you're thinking about cost optimization, self-hosting, making sure you are properly utilizing that is going to drive. Like I see, like we have compute setting and their utilization is hovering somewhere around 15-20%. 80% of the capacity is being unused. There's also the expectation that like the industry was built on that, hey, all of a sudden we'll have tectonic adoption. It never happened because all the reasons that we talked about it. And if there is not adoption, then there is no compute usage because that's where the compute is going to be used. If people are using it, if people are not using it, it's going to sit idle. So I think that is going to be the economic reality of the tech industry for some time. The first part of it, yes. There are also models where I'm seeing like early hopes where people will be making money, which is I was very optimistic by the products that were built for AI. They are the one that actually, like a famous saying is like, when there is a gold rush, you sell the shovels, right? So these products that are built for AI, I'm surprised how much demand is there. We are running out of talent to actually deploy and forward on the client side because everyone wants to deploy AI. No one has the talent in house to do that. They're asking us, can you help us do that? And it's basically humans going and doing that. So those, if you have to make profitable and make sure that you are using that, that's the model that I will go for it, unless you use it for something like Meta where you are improving and targeting the ads based on that. But I don't think many enterprises have that kind of scale. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
First part that you said, right, the compute.
Yeah.
That's what I think is what I'm like you talk about.
We are all naive here. We don't, no one in the industry knows what is going to happen with AI. Let me tell you that.
Just thinking out aloud here, right? Like because earlier you were saying that these models are trained on dated data, right? And then the other part of it is adoption across different industries
Yeah.
to get to AI at a point where it is amenable and also giving value to the customer, right? Like different industries are in different points of adoption. We talked about medical industry. I think none of us want to
Trust
be
them.
confident about if an AI agent is selling us something, right? So the medical industry has to go through a lot to get there.
Yeah.
So we can say that industry is going to use a lot of compute to train whatever models there is. So
Yeah.
when you made that point, because yes, like probably Meta has excess capacity, but on the other hand, we're also seeing like companies like Micron and all really doing good. So there is somewhere like I
It's a hype cycle. If we are at the crust where it will be defined whether we are at the top of the high cycle or it's going to go certain. There at one point there will be rationalization. This is like I don't have a crystal ball to look in the future. This is what I am seeing. We are at the peak of the hype cycle right now. The Micron, all the your laptops are expensive. Everything is getting expensive because of the memory. Where this memory is going, they're all going in the AI infrastructure.
right.
What is happening is at one point if we don't use the end user doesn't get the value, they are not able to drive the outcomes that they are trying, they are going to stop using that. You see this in Copilot example of Microsoft, right? So your question, what you are asking is, there will be different industry in different stages, and there are all this happens with any technology. Like when cloud came in, I was in the front seat for that. There were industries that never moved to cloud, not because of technical reasons, not because of financial reasons, but because of compliance reasons. The sovereign companies, the governments, the healthcare, because of HEPA compliance and other things, they will never adopt that. So I think there would be always laggers and there will be trailblazers, what I call it, like there will be early adopters who have low risk. Their business is not as regulated. They will be the first one to go and adopt it. Healthcare and other and trust and financials would be also called. Yeah.
Again, depends, right? Actually, if you look at the healthcare industry, there's lots of places where AI-based adoption is actually very useful. I mean, even think about the fact you go to your doctor now and then they'll ask you, is it okay if I record you because I'm going to use AI,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So there is adoption with guardrails, right? Or even in the AI being used for medical research
Mhm.
is going to be very useful and fundamentally helpful. And that's the place where that line between, like when you were saying, Gajendra, do I trust it? It depends on what you're going to use it for and what the outcome is going to be. Right?
I think you are absolutely right. Like one of the startups that I have helped in, they actually use AI to do research work. So what they are using it is that whenever there is a new publication of a research, earlier they had to go and know and then summarize, and someone has to spend. So that's where they are using it, but it doesn't require compliance boundary breach. It's very safe to use that. It's
Correct.
very use case
Correct.
specific that you
Correct.
say.
Or even, of
Absolutely right.
course, healthcare using AI for, cancer research and things that, I mean, UW does it right now, right?
Exactly.
And that's where compute will be needed. It is necessary and, of course, outcome driven. But again, there they are not laggards. They started doing this years back,
Yeah.
right? It just depends on where they're going to use it.
Absolutely right. These are use case based driven, the way we think about it. It's not industry specific. Like even when I talked about the tier 3 applications, it's not about the industry the healthcare will never adopt. What happens is that they break down the criticality by use case, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Tier 3 is the first one that goes the adoption, which is low risk. And obviously it will move up the tier over a period of time.
Okay. I think we'll wrap up the panel session for now. And any questions in the audience that you still want to talk to speakers about, you can grab them outside the hall and continue your discussion. That's for today. And thank you so much to all the speakers and to all the audience who've been waiting here until now. We'll see you at our next event, which is on August 12th. And it will be in the same hall. So we will love to see all your lovely faces here. Thank you so much. Have a good night, all of you. Thank you. Yeah, let's speak. Speakers, can we take a picture with the speakers? In front of the, we have the background, we'll do it there.